It was a damp autumn morning in Brookhaven, Georgia, on October 12, 2018, when the first call came in. For more true crime stories like this, hit the subscribe button. At exactly 7:18 a.m., a jogger named Rachel Dawson dialed 911, her voice trembling as she reported a strange sight along the wooded edge of Peachtree Creek Trail. What she initially thought was an abandoned mannequin turned out to be the body of a woman, partially hidden under wet leaves and a torn hospital blanket. When first responders arrived, the air was heavy with the smell of rain and pine. Officers from the DeKalb County Sheriff's Department quickly sealed the area with yellow tape as paramedics confirmed what was already clear: the woman was dead. For more true crime stories like this, hit the subscribe button. Her identification card, clipped to the blanket, revealed her name: Emily Carter, age 32, a registered nurse at St. Vincent Medical Center. Her phone was missing, her shoes were gone, but her silver necklace, engraved with the name Liam, her 6-year-old son, was still around her neck. Detective Laura Grayson, a 15-year veteran known for her meticulous work, arrived within the hour. She crouched near the scene, her gloved hand brushing aside the mud. "Looks like she was dragged," she murmured to her partner, Detective Ron Alvarez. They noted the drag marks leading from the walking path to the small clearing where Emily's body lay. For more true crime stories like this, hit the subscribe button. There were no obvious signs of sexual assault, no bullet wounds, no knife cuts, but faint bruises around her neck told another story, one of strangulation. By noon, news of the discovery had reached local media, and by evening, it was everywhere. Brookhaven nurse found dead on hiking trail, read the headlines. Emily Carter wasn't a stranger to her community. She had spent the past 7 years caring for patients in the emergency ward, often volunteering for double shifts. Friends described her as the kind of nurse who treated strangers like family. Her disappearance had been reported 3 days earlier, on October 9th, after she failed to pick up her son from school. Her ex-husband, Daniel Carter, had been the first to report her missing. The two had divorced a year earlier but maintained joint custody of Liam. For more true crime stories like this, hit the subscribe button. When questioned that day, Daniel told officers, "She texted me around 6 p.m. saying she'd stop by the store before heading home. After that, nothing." Her phone went straight to voicemail. At first, police treated it as a possible voluntary disappearance. Emily's car was missing, her credit cards unused, and there were no signs of struggle in her apartment. But the tone changed when her silver Honda Civic was found abandoned 2 miles away from the trail, parked behind a shuttered gas station. The doors were locked, but the driver's seat was reclined and muddy footprints were visible on the passenger floor. Detective Grayson studied the car herself that morning. "She didn't leave willingly," she told her team. "Someone staged this." The coroner's early report later confirmed time of death around late evening, October 9th, the night she vanished. Cause: asphyxiation due to manual strangulation. Emily's family was devastated. Her sister, Hannah Porter, broke down during a press conference outside the police headquarters. "Emily was the strongest person I knew. Whoever did this, they didn't just take her life. They destroyed a family." For more true crime stories like this, hit the subscribe button. Community members began leaving flowers and candles at the trailhead, transforming it into a vigil site. By the end of the week, hundreds attended a candlelight march carrying photos of Emily smiling in her blue scrubs. Behind the scenes, detectives were piecing together her last known movements. Surveillance footage from a Kroger supermarket on Peachtree Road, timestamped 6:14 p.m., showed Emily entering with a grocery basket. She was wearing her navy scrubs and holding her phone. She never appeared on the exit camera. That gap between entering the store and disappearing became the key focus of the early investigation. Detective Alvarez reviewed the footage repeatedly. "Someone followed her," he said quietly one night in the department's video lab. Witnesses inside the store recalled seeing Emily speaking to a man in a gray hoodie near the produce section. None could describe his face clearly. One remembered hearing Emily say, "I really don't want to talk about it here." For more true crime stories like this, hit the subscribe button. That sentence would later haunt investigators. Police pulled every security feed within a 2-mile radius. One, from a Chevron station across the street, showed a gray sedan leaving the parking lot just minutes after Emily entered the store. The car's license plate was partially visible, X92. It wasn't much, but it was something. Meanwhile, media speculation was growing. Talk shows and online forums buzzed with theories. Was it a random attack, or someone she knew? Many pointed to Daniel, her ex-husband, citing strained texts exchanged a week before her disappearance about custody arrangements. Others believed it was a patient or coworker, someone with a personal vendetta. Detective Grayson, however, wasn't ready to name suspects. She focused instead on the physical evidence. Soil samples from Emily's shoes, trace fibers on her clothing, and a single strand of blonde hair clinging to her sleeve. Emily's hair was brown. By October 18th, the department had a working theory. Emily left the grocery store, met someone she knew, and was lured toward the wooded trail. The lack of robbery and the targeted strangulation suggested personal motive. That afternoon, a new piece of evidence surfaced, one that shifted everything. A teenage boy, while skipping rocks along the creek near where Emily's body was found, discovered something glinting in the shallow water. It was a silver keychain with the engraved initials DC tied to a broken car key fob. When officers retrieved it and cross-checked the engraving, heart sank. DC, Daniel Carter. Detective Grayson stood over the evidence table, staring at the wet keychain. Her gut twisted, but she didn't speak. Not yet. That night, she visited Daniel's home. He answered the door with puffy eyes and shaking hands. "Detective, please, have you found anything?" he asked, his voice cracking. She simply nodded toward his car parked in the driveway, a gray Hyundai Sonata, license plate starting with X92. Daniel froze. In that single, silent moment, the entire investigation changed direction. And what began as a community's tragedy was about to turn into a revelation that would shake Brookhaven to its core. The morning after detectives connected the keychain to Daniel Carter, tension filled the Brookhaven Police Department. The discovery was compelling but not conclusive, and Detective Laura Grayson knew that rushing a case like this could destroy it in court. She gathered her team in the briefing room. The walls were plastered with photos of Emily, smiling in her scrubs, standing beside her son, walking into the grocery store that night. Next to them were maps, timelines, and forensic charts, each arrow pointing toward the same question: who killed Emily Carter? Detective Ron Alvarez was the first to speak. The keychain was found 40 yards from the body. Same initials as Daniel. His car matches the partial license plate, and he reported her missing. It's too neat. Grayson nodded. Exactly, too neat, which means we dig deeper. By 10 a.m., 2 forensic technicians arrived from the state lab to process Daniel's car. Inside his gray Hyundai Sonata, they found faint mud streaks on the backseat carpet, the same reddish-brown soil as the trail site. The passenger seatbelt was twisted, as if someone had been restrained or pulled. When questioned, Daniel claimed he hadn't driven near Peachtree Creek Trail in weeks. "That's where Emily used to jog," he told them, his voice defensive. "I wouldn't go near that place." But the digital forensics team soon discovered his phone GPS had pinged near the trail on the night of October 9th, around 8:42 p.m., within an hour of Emily's estimated time of death. Detective Grayson pressed him during the second interview. "You said you were home that night. Your phone puts you at the creek." Daniel looked cornered but defiant. "I was out looking for her," he insisted. "She stopped replying, and I panicked. I drove around the area, hoping I'd see her car. That's all." Grayson watched him carefully. "Why didn't you mention that before?" "Because I knew how it would look. It did look bad." But Grayson still wasn't convinced. Daniel's grief appeared genuine, raw, uncontrolled. And something about the way he trembled when he mentioned their son didn't fit the pattern of a cold-blooded killer. Meanwhile, the lab report on the blonde hair found on Emily's sleeve came back. Not a match to Daniel. The hair belonged to a female, but DNA analysis was still pending. Investigators expanded their focus to Emily's workplace. At St. Vincent Medical Center, her co-workers spoke highly of her, but admitted that the months before her death had been difficult. Emily had filed an internal complaint against a fellow nurse, Amanda Lewis, over medication errors and unprofessional behavior. Amanda didn't take it well, said the charge nurse. They argued, loudly, more than once. Detective Alvarez and Grayson visited Amanda at her apartment 2 days later. The 29-year-old nurse looked visibly nervous, her blonde hair pulled back in a messy bun. Amanda, Grayson began, we're following up on Emily Carter's case. We understand there were some disagreements between you two. Amanda folded her arms. Disagreements? That's putting it mildly. She tried to get me fired. Did you ever threaten her? Amanda's eyes flashed. No, but she wasn't innocent either. She made everything about herself. She was seeing one of the doctors, and it caused problems. That statement caught Grayson's attention. Which doctor? Amanda hesitated. Dr. Ryan Hale, Emergency Department. He's married. Dr. Hale, a respected trauma physician, had indeed worked closely with Emily for over a year. When police requested his cooperation, he came voluntarily. I cared about Emily, he admitted during questioning. But we weren't having an affair. We were friends, that's it. When asked where he was on October 9th, Hale stated he'd been at a medical conference in Nashville, supported by receipts and hotel surveillance footage. The lead seemed to fade until the DNA results from the lab came back. The blonde hair on Emily's sleeve matched Amanda Lewis. Detective Alvarez exhaled when the report landed on his desk. That's it. That's the connection. But Grayson wasn't ready to call it solved. DNA on clothing didn't prove murder, especially when the two worked together daily. Still, she requested a full search warrant for Amanda's apartment and car. During the search, investigators found a gray hoodie, partially soaked with what appeared to be mud, stuffed deep inside a laundry bin. Forensic swabs revealed traces of Emily's blood near the cuff. Amanda denied knowing how it got there. I didn't kill her, she shouted as detectives led her out in handcuffs for questioning. Back at the precinct, Grayson laid out photos of the evidence across the table. Amanda, we found your hair on her sleeve. We found her blood on your hoodie. You were seen arguing with her the week before she vanished. Start explaining. Amanda shook her head, tears welling up. I followed her to the store that night. Okay? I wanted to talk, to make things right, but she got angry. She said she was going to HR again. We argued in the parking lot. She pushed me. I pushed her back, and she fell. I panicked. You panicked, Grayson repeated quietly. I left. She was still breathing when I drove off. I swear. Detectives knew that version didn't fit the medical examiner's findings. Strangulation required sustained pressure. Panic didn't last minutes. Someone finished it, Alvarez murmured later, studying the file. Either she's lying, or there's another person involved. They continued digging. Surveillance footage from the Kroger parking lot, recently enhanced by the state lab, revealed something new. A second figure appeared just seconds after Emily and Amanda walked out of frame. A tall man in a dark jacket, stepping from the shadows toward the direction they had gone. The timestamp, 6:37 p.m. Grayson replayed it several times, freezing on the man's profile. It wasn't Daniel. It wasn't anyone from the hospital staff photos they'd reviewed. Whoever he was, he arrived at the exact moment the argument turned violent. A new possibility began to form, that Amanda's confrontation might have been witnessed or interrupted by someone else. For the next week, detectives reviewed missing persons, parolee databases, and traffic cameras near the trail. That's when a license plate reader pinged the same gray sedan seen leaving the area, the one with the partial plate X92. The full match belonged not to Daniel Carter, but to a vehicle registered under one of Emily's former patients, Michael Dunn. Dunn was a 41-year-old construction worker Emily had treated months earlier after a workplace injury. He had reportedly become fixated on her, even leaving small gifts at the hospital before being warned by security to stop. When investigators visited his last known address, the apartment appeared vacant, except for one chilling find: a stack of newspaper clippings about Emily's death taped to the wall, and a missing car key fob, its key ring broken in half. The matching half, the one with the initials DC, had been planted by the creek. Grayson stared at the evidence bag in silence, realization sinking in. Someone had tried to frame Daniel. The task force moved quickly. An arrest warrant was issued for Michael Dunn, now believed to be hiding somewhere near Atlanta's south side. That night, officers surrounded a small motel in Forest Park, acting on a tip from a clerk who recognized Dunn's face from the wanted flyer. They breached room 207 at 11:14 p.m. For more true crime stories like this, hit the subscribe button. Inside, Dunn was sitting on the floor, muttering, "She said she'd help me. She said she cared." In the corner, a muddy pair of boots and a folded hospital blanket, identical to the one covering Emily's body, sat by the door. He didn't resist arrest. As he was led out, he looked directly at Detective Grayson. "You don't understand. She didn't deserve me leaving her there." That single line chilled everyone in the room. For more true crime stories like this, hit the subscribe button. But what he meant by leaving her there, and what role Amanda truly played in Emily's final moments, was still buried beneath lies, obsession, and fear. And those answers would only come after his confession. The arrest of Michael Dunn was the breakthrough Detective Laura Grayson's team had been fighting for. But to her, it didn't yet feel like victory. Too many pieces still didn't fit. Amanda Lewis's DNA on Emily's sleeve, the staged keychain, the gray sedan near the store. Inside the Brookhaven precinct's interrogation room, Dunn sat handcuffed, eyes hollow. He was sweating despite the cool air, his hands trembling slightly. Detective Ron Alvarez placed a folder on the table. "Michael, we found the blanket from St. Vincent in your motel room. The same kind that covered Emily Carter. You want to tell us how it got there?" Dunn rubbed his face, his voice breaking. "She cared about me. None of you understand that." Grayson leaned forward, calm but firm. "Emily cared about her patients. That's her job. You were one of them. You crossed a line." He shook his head, muttering, "She said she'd help me get better. She promised." Over the next 2 hours, detectives pieced together a disturbing timeline. After being treated for a broken arm at St. Vincent Medical Center, Dunn developed what he described as a connection with Emily. He began visiting her during shifts, bringing flowers and coffee, until the hospital warned him to stop. When he didn't, he was escorted out and banned from the premises. "After that," Grayson said, flipping through his record, "you sent her messages, dozens, some angry, some begging. Then she disappeared. 3 days later, she was dead." Dunn looked up slowly. "I didn't plan to hurt her. I just wanted to see her again. She was supposed to meet me that night." Grayson exchanged a sharp glance with Alvarez. "Meet you? How?" He hesitated. "She said she'd talk to me after work, at the store near Peachtree Road. She never came out, so I waited. When she finally walked out with that other woman, they were fighting. I followed. And then," he swallowed hard, "she ran toward the trail. I tried to stop her. She fell. She screamed my name, said to let her go." His voice cracked. "I didn't mean to squeeze that hard. I just wanted her to stop fighting me. When she stopped moving, I panicked. I didn't know what to do." The room fell silent. "Did Amanda see you?" Grayson asked. He nodded weakly. "She ran off when she saw me chasing Emily. She knows what happened. She saw everything." That single admission tied Amanda directly to the scene, not just as a witness, but as someone who concealed the truth. When detectives confronted Amanda a second time, she was sitting in a holding cell, eyes swollen from crying. "Michael Dunn?" she repeated in disbelief. "He was there." "You left her," Grayson said evenly. "You saw him and didn't call for help. Why?" Amanda broke down. "Because I thought I'd go to jail. I pushed her first, I started it. I didn't know he was following her. I heard her scream, and then I saw him grab her. I froze. I was terrified." "So you ran," Alvarez said quietly. Amanda nodded. "I told myself she'd be okay, but when I saw the news later, I knew. It was cowardice, not conspiracy. but it cost Emily her life. Prosecutors charged Michael Dunn with first-degree murder and Amanda Lewis with obstruction of justice and tampering with evidence. Still, something gnawed at Grayson. Dunn's story had inconsistencies. He described following Emily for hours, but his car's GPS placed him only near the scene for 20 minutes. If he wasn't stalking her all day, who sent the message arranging the meeting? Forensics provided the missing link. Emily's phone, recovered from Dunn's motel room trash can, contained deleted texts from an unknown number. "Meet me after work. I just want to talk. I'll be near the Kroger." The sender wasn't Dunn, it was a prepaid burner phone. Detective Grayson stared at the evidence. Someone lured her there. It wasn't random. Someone orchestrated that night, knowing Emily would show up and that her ex-husband would be the prime suspect. Digital analysts traced the burner phone's last activity to a public Wi-Fi network, a cafe 2 blocks from Daniel Carter's house. But security footage from that cafe revealed the real user, Amanda Lewis. When confronted again, Amanda's tone shifted from guilt to desperation. "I didn't mean for her to die," she cried. For more true crime stories like this, hit the subscribe button. I just wanted to scare her, make her understand what she did to me. I knew Dunn was obsessed. I thought if I told him she'd be at the store, maybe he'd talk to her, and she'd stop ruining my career. Grayson's voice turned cold. "You set her up." Amanda's silence was answer enough. She had texted Emily pretending to be a hospital HR representative, asking to meet in person. Then, using the burner phone, she tipped Dunn off, knowing he'd show up. She never expected it to turn deadly, but when it did, she chose silence over truth. The district attorney now faced a tangled case, one involving manipulation, obsession, and betrayal. Dunn's defense claimed he'd been emotionally unstable, manipulated by Amanda's lies. Amanda's attorney argued she never intended violence. In December 2019, the courtroom was packed. Reporters lined the back row. Emily's family sat together in the front, clutching photos of her in her nursing uniform. Dunn appeared gaunt, his orange jumpsuit hanging loosely. Amanda, wearing a gray suit, kept her head down. Prosecutors presented their narrative with chilling precision. Amanda set the trap, Dunn delivered the fatal act. Together, their actions ended a young mother's life. On the stand, Dunn wept as he described the moment he realized Emily wasn't breathing. "She looked peaceful. I thought she'd wake up. I didn't want to let go." The jury sat motionless. When Amanda testified, her voice trembled. "I never wanted her dead. I just wanted her to feel what I felt. Powerless." In her closing statement, District Attorney Tara Willis turned to the jury. Emily Carter's only crime was compassion. The people she helped, the ones she trusted, used that compassion against her. The verdict came after 5 hours of deliberation. Michael Dunn, guilty of first-degree murder. Amanda Lewis, guilty of conspiracy and obstruction. Dunn was sentenced to life in prison without parole. Amanda received 15 years. The courtroom gasped when Daniel Carter stood to speak during sentencing. His voice shook but carried strength. "Emily was my best friend long before she was my wife. I hope none of you ever know what it's like to explain to a child that his mother isn't coming home. But justice, real justice, means truth. And today, we finally have that." As bailiffs led Dunn away, he turned to Daniel and whispered, "She forgave me. You'll see." Daniel frowned. "What did you say?" But Dunn just smiled faintly and said nothing more. Later that night, Detective Grayson sat alone in her office, reviewing final evidence logs before closing the case. One photo stopped her, an image of the hospital blanket found in Dunn's room. The tag didn't read St. Vincent Medical Center, as she'd always assumed. It read Brookhaven General Hospital, where Dunn had been treated, not where Emily worked. Her heart skipped. If the blanket came from his hospital, not hers, who covered Emily's body with it? Dunn had said, "She didn't deserve me leaving her there." Grayson replayed the interrogation footage, her finger hovering over pause. Just before his arrest, Dunn had looked directly at her and said, "You don't understand. She wasn't alone when I left." Her eyes widened. Someone else had been there, someone still unaccounted for. And that meant the story wasn't over. The courtroom verdict should have marked the end. But for Detective Laura Grayson, the file labeled Carter, Emily, closed, didn't feel final. Something about Dunn's last words, "She wasn't alone when I left," stayed with her like a whisper in the dark. 3 months after the trial, Grayson sat in her car overlooking Peachtree Creek Trail, the same place where it had all begun. The leaves had turned brittle, and the air smelled of rain and pine again, just like the morning Emily's body was found. Grayson had returned because she couldn't shake the sense that something had been missed. She reopened her laptop, scrolling through the old evidence photos. Dunn's motel room, the gray hoodie, the hospital blanket. That blanket still bothered her. Brookhaven General Hospital, not St. Vincent. Dunn hadn't taken it from his workplace. He'd been unemployed for months. Someone had to bring it there. She replayed the interrogation footage from Dunn's arrest. In the background, faint but audible, another voice could be heard through the thin motel wall, a woman's. Grayson froze the clip and called the audio techs. Within hours, they enhanced the sound. "She said you'd understand," the female voice whispered. Grayson's pulse quickened. She had assumed Dunn acted alone, but now it seemed someone else had been inside that motel room before the arrest. She cross-referenced the motel guest log from that night. 2 rooms were booked under the same prepaid card. Room 207, Dunn's, and Room 208. The name used, L. Carter. She stared at the screen. L. Carter, Liam Carter. It wasn't possible. Emily's son was 8 years old at the time. But Daniel Carter had recently begun using his son's name for online purchases to avoid harassment from tabloids after the trial. The card traced back to Daniel's debit account. That discovery reignited the entire case. Detective Grayson paid Daniel a visit the next morning. He looked worn, unshaven, eyes shadowed with exhaustion. His house was quiet except for the sound of Liam's cartoons playing faintly in another room. "Daniel," she said gently, "did you book a motel room in Forest Park last October? Under your son's name?" He stiffened. "Why are you asking me that? I thought this was over." "Because the man who killed your ex-wife wasn't alone that night. Someone was next door to him." Daniel's expression shifted from confusion to fear. I don't know anything about that." "Then why does your debit card show a charge for 2 motel rooms?" He looked down, silent. Then he said quietly, "I went there after the police took him in. I needed to see where he'd been. I booked a room next door because I couldn't stand being at home. I didn't know someone else had used the same card earlier." Grayson studied him. His words rang hollow. That afternoon, she revisited surveillance from the motel parking lot. At 8:52 p.m., an hour before Dunn's arrest, Daniel's Hyundai appeared in the lot. He stepped out, looking around nervously, and approached room 207. For several minutes, he stood at the door, then turned and walked away. The timestamp made it clear. Daniel had been there before police arrived. When confronted again, Daniel's voice trembled. "I wasn't trying to interfere. I just wanted answers. He killed her, and I needed to see him to know why." "Did you speak to him?" Grayson asked. He nodded slowly. "I knocked." He opened the door. He was crying. He said, "She's still here," and pointed to the blanket. That's when I realized he'd taken something from the trail. I wanted to make sure he'd pay for what he did. "Did you touch anything in that room?" Daniel hesitated, then admitted, "I moved the blanket. I shouldn't have. I took it and threw it in the corner." That explained why the tag had confused her. Daniel's fingerprints were on it, but there was something deeper in his tone, something unresolved. "Daniel," she said softly, "what did he mean when he said, 'She's still here'?" He looked up, eyes red. "He told me Emily forgave him, that he heard her voice. I thought he was delusional." "Did you believe him?" "No," Daniel whispered. "But sometimes, when Liam sleeps, he talks to her. He says she visits him in dreams, wearing the same necklace she wore that night. It sounds crazy, but maybe she's trying to tell us something." Grayson exhaled. The case was closed, but the grief, the emotional wreckage, still lingered. Over the next few months, Brookhaven began to heal. The trail reopened. The hospital dedicated a memorial garden to Emily, planting a white rose bush for every patient she'd once treated. Her colleagues often visited on their breaks, laying fresh flowers near a bronze plaque engraved with her name. Emily Carter, 1986 to 2018, a heart that never stopped caring. Amanda Lewis served her sentence quietly, reportedly volunteering in the prison infirmary. Her attorney later said she wrote weekly letters to Emily's sister, begging forgiveness, letters that went unanswered. Michael Dunn spent his days in the Georgia State Prison, isolated under suicide watch. In 2021, he sent a handwritten letter to the DA's office, addressed to Detective Grayson. Inside, he wrote only one line: "There was someone else on that trail that night. She talked to Emily before I did." Attached was a rough sketch, a woman's silhouette with shoulder-length hair and a cross pendant. Grayson thought it might be symbolic until she realized Emily's sister, Hannah Porter, always wore that same pendant. When confronted with the letter, Hannah looked stunned. "No, I wasn't there that night. I swear. I was home." But the investigators had phone tower data from 2018. Her phone had pinged within 2 miles of the trail the night Emily died. She broke down in tears. "We argued that night," Hannah confessed. "She was planning to take Liam and move out of state. I didn't want her to. I told her she couldn't run forever. I never saw that man following her. By the time I realized what was happening, it was too late." She had seen the confrontation between Emily and Dunn from a distance but froze, terrified. She told no one. "I thought if I said something, they'd blame me too," she whispered. The revelation crushed Daniel, who had trusted Hannah to help raise Liam after Emily's death. But legally, it didn't change the verdict. Dunn was still the killer. Amanda was still the instigator. Hannah was simply another broken piece of a tragedy that had already taken everything. Detective Grayson finally closed the file again. This time, not because all answers were found, but because there were none left to give. On the 5th anniversary of Emily's death, Brookhaven held a memorial walk along Peachtree Creek Trail. Hundreds attended, candles flickering against the dusk. Daniel spoke briefly, his son by his side. "Grief never really leaves," he said. "It just changes shape." Emily gave everything she had to make others feel safe. That's how I want us to remember her. Not for how she died, but for how she lived. For more true crime stories like this, hit the subscribe button. When the ceremony ended, Detective Grayson lingered at the memorial. The wind rustled the trees, and for a fleeting moment, she thought she heard a woman's voice whisper, "Thank you." She smiled faintly, her eyes glistening. Some cases never leave you. They live quietly in the spaces between justice and memory. And for Brookhaven, Emily Carter's story would forever remind them of both. Thank you for watching. You've been watching True Crime Story Vault, where every story is told with facts, not fiction. If the story moved you, share your thoughts in the comments. What do you think really happened that night on Peachtree Creek Trail?